The silent hunter emerges the vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly before the Zephyrian Imperial fleet as they patrolled the outer territories of their domain. Admiral Kekstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign's Wrath, his 4 arms crossed behind his back in a gesture of absolute authority. His crimson scales caught the blue light of the tactical displays, creating an intimidating presence that had struck fear into countless enemy commanders across the galaxy. For 3 centuries, the Zephyrian Empire had expanded without meeting serious resistance. Their technology was superior, their military doctrine refined through countless victories, and their confidence absolute. They had encountered dozens of species during their expansion, and each had either submitted or been crushed. The pattern was always the same. First came fear, then desperate resistance, and finally inevitable surrender. Admiral called out Navigation Officer Yelenara from her station, her voice carrying the crisp efficiency that Kekstar demanded from his crew. Long-range sensors are detecting an unidentified vessel at coordinates 7-7-Mark-4. Distance: approximately 50,000 kilometers, and closing slowly. Kekstar's golden eyes narrowed as he approached the central holographic display. The sensor readings painted a picture of something unusual. The ship was small, roughly half the size of a Zephyrian cruiser, with an odd, angular design that seemed more functional than aesthetic. Most curious of all, it appeared to be drifting, showing minimal energy signatures and erratic movement patterns. Tactical analysis, Kekstar ordered, his voice carrying the weight of absolute command. Lieutenant Commander Vexton, the ship's tactical officer, manipulated the display controls with practiced precision. The vessel appears to be severely damaged, sir. Hull breaches detected in multiple sections, power fluctuations throughout their systems, and what looks like failing life support. Design is completely unknown, doesn't match any species in our databases. The Admiral studied the readings with interest. In his experience, damaged ships meant easy salvage and potentially valuable prisoners for interrogation. Yet something about this particular vessel intrigued him. The design was crude by Zephyrian standards, but there was an underlying practicality to it that suggested its builders were not primitive, merely focused on different priorities. Deploy the fleet in standard intimidation formation, Kekstar commanded. Ready all weapons, but do not lock targeting systems. I want to see how they respond to our presence. The massive Zephyrian fleet moved with terrifying precision. 7 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and countless smaller support vessels formed a sphere around the unknown ship, their hulls gleaming like predatory fish circling wounded prey. Each ship was a masterpiece of military engineering, designed to inspire fear and demonstrate the overwhelming power of the Empire. On the bridge of the mysterious vessel, Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the alien fleet surround her ship with calm, calculating eyes. Her brown hair was pulled back in a regulation ponytail, and her weathered face bore the confident expression of someone who had faced impossible odds before. The bridge of the UES Defiant was cramped compared to the luxury of the alien flagship. Every surface dedicated to functionality rather than display. Captain, reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Chen, we're receiving multiple targeting sweeps from the alien fleet. No weapons lock yet, but they're definitely studying our capabilities. Rodriguez nodded slowly, her fingers drumming against the armrest of her captain's chair. Excellent. Let them look. How are our stealth systems performing? All quantum masking. Fields are operating at peak efficiency, replied Chief Engineer Patel over the intercom. As far as their sensors can tell, we're exactly what we appear to be. A damaged exploration vessel barely holding together. The truth was far more complex. The used Defiant was humanity's most advanced warship, a testament to decades of careful research and development. What appeared to be hull damage was actually adaptive camouflage, designed to make the ship appear vulnerable while concealing its true capabilities. The erratic power readings were carefully orchestrated to maintain the illusion of a dying vessel. Rodriguez had been playing this game for months, allowing various alien reconnaissance patrols to detect her ship while she studied their tactics, technology, and military doctrine. Each encounter had been carefully managed to appear accidental, giving humanity invaluable intelligence about potential galactic neighbors, while maintaining the facade of a primitive, struggling species. "Incoming transmission from the alien flagship," announced Lieutenant Chen. On screen, Rodriguez replied, straightening in her chair and adopting the posture of someone trying to appear strong. Despite desperate circumstances, the main display flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Admiral Kex. The alien's reptilian features were striking, with intelligent golden eyes that seemed to bore through the screen with predatory intensity. When he spoke, the universal translator rendered his words in accented but understandable English. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Zephyrian Imperial territory without authorization. Identify yourself immediately and prepare to be boarded." Rodriguez allowed herself to appear momentarily intimidated before finding her voice. "This is Captain Alina Rodriguez of the United Earthship Defiant. We're an exploration vessel from the planet Earth. Our navigation systems were damaged in an asteroid collision, and we've been drifting for weeks. We mean no harm and request assistance." On the Zephyrian flagship, murmurs of interest rippled through the bridge crew. Admiral Kexter raised one clawed hand for silence, his tactical mind already analyzing this new information. Humans, another species to catalogue, study, and ultimately incorporate into the Empire. The fact that they had somehow achieved interstellar travel was interesting, but their apparent desperation and primitive technology suggested they would pose no real threat. Captain Rodriguez Kextar replied, his tone carrying the casual arrogance of absolute power. "You claim to be explorers, yet you venture far from your home system with such primitive technology. Tell me, how many of your kind exist? What is the extent of your civilization?" Rodriguez had prepared for these questions during the long months of reconnaissance. Her response was carefully crafted to sound like the desperate honesty of someone seeking help while revealing just enough information to maintain interest. "Earth has a population of roughly 8 billion humans, Admiral. We're a young spacefaring species, only recently developed faster-than-light travel. The Defiant is one of only 12 ships in our deep space exploration fleet. We're trying to learn about the galaxy and find our place among the stars." The admission seemed to satisfy Kexter's expectations. A young species with limited technology and military capability, exactly the kind of civilization the Empire had conquered countless times before. Yet something about the human captain intrigued him. Despite her apparently desperate situation, she maintained a dignity and composure that spoke of inner strength. "Your honesty is appreciated," Captain Kextar said, though his tone suggested this was more interrogation than conversation. "However, you remain in violation of Imperial space. Your options are simple. Surrender your vessel for inspection, and accept transportation to an Imperial facility, or face the consequences of continued resistance." Rodriguez appeared to consider the ultimatum carefully, allowing tension to build on both bridges. When she finally responded, her voice carried a note of reluctant acceptance tinged with hidden steel. Admiral Caxter. I understand the gravity of our situation. However, before I make any decisions that could affect the lives of my crew, I need to understand your intentions. Are you offering assistance to a lost vessel, or are you demanding unconditional surrender? The question caught Caxter off guard. In his experience, weaker species either immediately capitulated or made desperate threats. This human captain was doing neither. Instead, she was engaging in diplomatic inquiry while surrounded by overwhelming force. It was either extremely naive or extremely confident. I am offering you the opportunity to cooperate, Caxter replied, his voice hardening slightly. The Zephyrian Empire does not make requests. We extend courtesy to those who demonstrate wisdom and appropriate respect. Rodriguez nodded slowly, as if weighing her options, then made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Admiral, in the spirit of cooperation and as a gesture of good faith, I'm prepared to share some information about human space exploration protocols. Perhaps we can find a mutually beneficial solution to this situation. As she spoke, Rodriguez made a subtle hand signal to her bridge crew. Throughout the ship, systems that had been carefully disguised began to power up. The quantum masking fields that had hidden the Defiant's true capabilities started to fluctuate in precisely controlled patterns. On the Zephyrian flagship, sensor operator Kelmoth suddenly straightened at his station, his scaled features showing confusion and growing alarm. "Admiral," he called out, his voice carrying an edge of uncertainty, "I'm detecting power fluctuations in the human vessel. Their energy output is increasing exponentially, but the patterns don't match any known propulsion or weapons systems." Caxter's golden eyes snapped to the tactical display, watching as the readings from the human ship began to shift and change. What had appeared to be a dying vessel was suddenly showing energy signatures that rivaled those of Imperial cruisers. More disturbing still, the ship's damaged hull was beginning to shimmer and reform, revealing sleek armor plating beneath what had obviously been sophisticated camouflage. Captain Rodriguez Caxter said slowly, his voice carrying a new note of wariness, "Your ship appears to be undergoing some kind of transformation. Explain what we are observing." Rodriguez smiled for the first time since the conversation began, and the expression was neither frightened nor desperate. Instead, it carried the quiet confidence of someone who had been holding back their true strength. "Admiral, what you're observing is the true face of human engineering. The damaged exploration vessel you detected was what we call a diplomatic configuration. We've found that first contact situations tend to go more smoothly when we don't immediately present ourselves as a potential threat." The implications of her words sent a chill through the Zephyrian bridge crew. This was not a lucky encounter with a primitive species. This was a planned contact scenario, orchestrated by beings who had been studying them while remaining undetected. "You have been deceiving us," Caxter said, though whether it was an accusation or a statement of grudging respect was unclear. "We have been cautious," Rodriguez corrected gently. "Admiral, humanity has been aware of the Zephyrian Empire for quite some time. We've observed your expansion patterns, studied your military tactics, and learned about your cultural values. What we've seen has been ... instructive." As she spoke, the sensors showed that the human ship had completed its transformation. Where once there had been a battered explorer, now floated a sleek predator that seemed to drink in the light around it. More alarming still, additional energy signatures were beginning to appear throughout the system as previously undetected human vessels decloaked from positions surrounding the entire Zephyrian fleet. Admiral Caxter felt something he had not experienced in decades: uncertainty. The hunters had become the hunted, and he was beginning to understand that this first contact was not the beginning of human subjugation, but rather humanity's formal introduction to galactic politics. When predators meet their match, the revelation that the Zephyrian Imperial fleet was surrounded sent shockwaves through every ship in Admiral Kekstar's formation. What had begun as a routine encounter with a primitive species had transformed into the most complex military situation the Admiral had faced in his long career. On the bridge of the Sovereign's wrath, the usual confident atmosphere had been replaced by tense uncertainty. "Tactical report," Kekstar commanded, his voice maintaining its authoritative tone despite the growing complexity of the situation. Lieutenant Commander Vexton worked frantically at his console, trying to make sense of the sensor readings that seemed to defy everything he understood about military technology. "Admiral, we're detecting at least 15 additional human vessels that have just decloaked. They were completely invisible to our sensors until now. Their positions suggest they've been tracking our fleet movements for ... possibly hours." The implications were staggering. The Zephyrian Empire's sensor technology was among the most advanced in the galaxy, capable of detecting ships at extreme ranges and penetrating most known stealth systems. The fact that human vessels had remained undetected while maneuvering into strategic positions around an entire Imperial fleet represented a technological achievement that challenged fundamental assumptions about human capabilities. Captain Rodriguez observed the growing tension on the alien bridge through her communication link, her expression remaining calm and professional. She had spent months preparing for this moment, gaming out dozens of scenarios for first contact with what appeared to be the galaxy's dominant military power. The key was to demonstrate human capabilities without triggering a defensive response that could escalate into actual conflict. "Admiral Kekstar," she said, her voice cutting through the anxious discussions taking place on the Zephyrian bridge. "I can see that our reveal has created some concern among your crew. That was not our intention. Perhaps we should discuss the situation more directly." Kekstar studied the human captain's face, searching for signs of deception or hidden aggression. What he found instead was a professional military officer who seemed genuinely interested in peaceful resolution despite holding what appeared to be a significant tactical advantage. It was a combination that both intrigued and unsettled him. "Captain Rodriguez, your deception suggests a level of technological sophistication that contradicts your earlier claims about human civilization. Which version represents the truth?" Rodriguez nodded, acknowledging the validity of his concern. "Both versions are true, Admiral. Humanity is indeed a young spacefaring species with a relatively small interstellar presence. However, we've chosen to focus our technological development on specific areas that we deemed essential for survival in an unknown galaxy. Stealth technology, adaptive systems, and defensive capabilities were priorities." She paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. "What you observed earlier was our diplomatic protocol. When encountering unknown civilizations, we prefer to assess their intentions before revealing our full capabilities. Your Empire's reputation for rapid expansion preceded our meeting. The admission that humans had been studying the Zephyr Empire before making contact sent another wave of unease through the alien bridge crew. Intelligence gathering of that sophistication implied not just advanced technology, but strategic thinking that suggested humans were far from the primitive explorers they had initially appeared to be. "Show me," Kekstar said suddenly. "If your technology is as advanced as you claim, demonstrate it. But be aware that any aggressive action will be met with overwhelming force." Rodriguez smiled slightly at the challenge. She had expected this moment and had prepared a demonstration that would showcase human capabilities without appearing threatening. Understood, Admiral. Lieutenant Chen, please initiate the Aurora Protocol on every human vessel in the system. Crews began executing a carefully choreographed display of technological prowess. The ships began to move in perfect synchronization, their stealth fields flickering in patterns that created beautiful displays of light against the starfield. More impressive than the visual spectacle was the precision of their movements. Each vessel maintained perfect formation while demonstrating maneuvers that should have been impossible given their size and apparent mass. "My God," whispered Sensor Operator Kelmuth on the Zephyrian flagship. "Admiral, their inertial compensation systems are operating at efficiency levels we've never seen. They're pulling maneuvers that should tear their ships apart, but internal gravity appears completely stable." The demonstration continued as human ships began to phase in and out of visibility, their adaptive camouflage systems creating the illusion that they were materializing and vanishing at will. The effect was both beautiful and deeply unsettling to observers who prided themselves on military superiority. But the most impressive aspect of the display was its restraint. Every maneuver, every technological demonstration, was clearly designed to showcase capability without suggesting aggression. The human ships maintained respectful distances, their weapons remained powered down, and their formations suggested defensive rather than offensive intent. "Admiral," Captain Rodriguez's voice cut through the stunned silence on the Zephyrian bridge. "What you're observing represents humanity's approach to galactic relations. We believe in prepared diplomacy. We study potential neighbors, develop the capabilities necessary to engage as equals, and then approach with both strength and peaceful intentions." Kekstar found himself in uncharted territory. His entire career had been built around the assumption of Zephyrian technological and tactical superiority. The idea that a recently spacefaring species could match or exceed Imperial capabilities in key areas challenged fundamental beliefs about galactic hierarchy. "Your demonstration is impressive," he admitted, though his tone remained guarded. "But technological capability alone does not determine the outcome of conflicts. The Zephyrian Empire has conquered systems with superior technology through superior strategy and resolve." Rodriguez nodded respectfully. "You're absolutely correct, Admiral. Technology without wisdom and strategy is merely sophisticated destruction. That's why humanity has spent considerable time studying not just your military capabilities, but your cultural values and strategic thinking." She paused, her expression becoming more serious. "We've observed that the Zephyrian Empire values strength, honor, and decisive action. These are principles we respect and share. However, we've also observed that your expansion has often come at the cost of other civilizations. We chose to reveal ourselves now because we believe there's an opportunity for a different kind of relationship." The bridge fell silent as both crews processed the implications of her words. This was no longer a simple first contact scenario. It was a fundamental challenge to the established order of galactic politics. "What kind of relationship do you propose?" Kekstar asked finally, his voice carefully neutral. "Alliance," Rodriguez replied without hesitation. "Not submission, not conquest, but partnership between equals. Humanity has capabilities that could benefit the Zephyrian Empire, and you possess knowledge and experience that could help humanity navigate galactic politics more effectively." The concept was revolutionary. The Zephyrian Empire had never formed alliances with equals because they had never encountered any. Every relationship had been defined by dominance and submission, conqueror and conquered. The idea of voluntary Cooperation between species of comparable capability was theoretically possible, but practically unprecedented. "And if we decline your offer of alliance?" Kekstar asked, though his tone suggested he was exploring possibilities rather than issuing threats. Rodriguez's expression didn't change, but her voice carried a subtle shift that suggested steel beneath the diplomatic courtesy. "Then humanity will continue our exploration and development independently. We have no interest in aggressive expansion, Admiral, but we are fully prepared to defend our interests and our allies." The statement was delivered without bluster or dramatic emphasis, which somehow made it more compelling. Kekstar recognized the tone of someone who had carefully considered all possibilities and was prepared for any outcome. "Your confidence is admirable, Captain, but you remain significantly outnumbered in this system. Even with your technological advantages, you could not hope to match the combined firepower of an Imperial fleet." Rodriguez tilted her head slightly, and for the first time, her smile carried a hint of something that might have been amusement. "Admiral, may I share something about human military philosophy? We don't believe in fair fights. If we were concerned about the firepower disadvantage, we wouldn't be here." As if to emphasize her point, the sensors on every Zephyrian ship suddenly detected massive energy signatures approaching from outside the system. Through the viewports, they could see the distinctive distortions of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, not just a few ships, but what appeared to be an entire fleet materializing at the edge of the system. "Admiral," Sensor Operator Kelmoth reported, his voice tight with professional calm despite obvious stress, "I'm detecting approximately 40 additional human vessels just entering the system. Configuration suggests a mix of cruisers, destroyers, and support ships. They're maintaining position at the system perimeter, but, Admiral, their combined firepower would significantly exceed our own." Kekstar stared at the tactical display, watching as the human fleet took up positions that would allow them to control all exit routes from the system. The movement was executed with military precision that spoke of extensive planning and coordination. This encounter had been orchestrated from the beginning, with contingencies prepared for every possible Zephyrian response. "Captain Rodriguez," he said slowly, "it appears your diplomatic mission comes with substantial backup." "Prepared diplomacy, Admiral," she replied calmly. "We hoped for the best, but planned for all possibilities. However, I want to be absolutely clear about something. Those ships are here as insurance, not as a threat. We genuinely prefer cooperation to conflict." The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable, but so was the implicit message humanity had. The capability to engage the Zephyrian Empire on equal terms, but chose to offer partnership instead of demanding submission. It was a display of strength tempered by wisdom that commanded respect even from a career military officer. "You've given me much to consider," Kekstar said finally. "This conversation has challenged assumptions I've held for decades. Perhaps the galaxy is more complex than the Empire has assumed." Rodriguez nodded, sensing the shift in the Admiral's thinking. "The universe is vast, Admiral, and filled with possibilities we're only beginning to understand. Humanity believes that cooperation and mutual respect can achieve more than dominance and fear." For several long moments, the two commanders regarded each other across the communication link, each recognizing in the other a professional worthy of respect. The tension that had characterized the early part of their encounter had evolved into something more complex and potentially more productive. "Captain Rodriguez," Kekstar said at last, "I believe this encounter deserves to be continued in a more formal setting. Would you be willing to accompany a small delegation to the imperial capital for direct discussions with High Command? The offer represented a dramatic shift from the Admiral's initial position, and Rodriguez recognized it as such. I would be honored, Admiral. Perhaps it's time for our species to begin writing a new chapter in galactic history. As the two fleets maintained their positions in the void of space, both commanders knew they had participated in something unprecedented. The age of Zephyrian dominance had not ended, but it had been forever changed by the emergence of a species that chose cooperation over conquest, wisdom over warfare. The first meeting between humans and the Zephyrian Empire would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy learned that strength and diplomacy were not mutually exclusive, and that the future belonged to those wise enough to choose partnership over domination.